Well, hello. Welcome to the Kingsway Podcast. Good to see you. Thanks for tuning in. Rocking and rolling. Jed, you're joining me today.
Hey.
It's good to see you on camera. You know, it's the mystical voice. You're like the
one that just
James Earl Jones of
calls
Kingsway.
From the deep.
You're Mufasa.
The black beyond behind the camera.
What's fun is when we get you on camera, you show your professionalism. I was pointing this out before we started, but you got your coffee, your laptop. You were put together. I brought nothing. So
don't even have your Bible this time.
Nope, I don't even have my Bible. Oh, man. It's starting off great.
Yeah, we're killing it.
Well, I know every week we kind of change things up a little bit or move things around, and we're excited to kind of. I think I can preview it. Next week we're going to start a 2-week thing or at least a two-parter called "How to Be a Man" or "How do we be a man today" or "Man Up" or something around that. But it's basically like what does it look like to be a man? And just give them a quick preview. The thought is in most cultures, there's this time when a boy becomes a man. Mm-hmm. And like we know, they kind of have a set thing, whether it's an age or an event. What does that look like for us? And then on top of that, what does it look like to continue that or to show that? So I'm excited to talk about that. It's kind of around, of course, Father's Day.
Yeah.
Which is like, it's not Man Day, but it is about men. So it kind of makes sense. Hoping to have a special guest or two. We'll see if we can get them working on them, but that'll be in the works. And
please.
Hopefully that'll happen. So, but today, kind of around the theme of, I think our intention here is to be like lovers of learning is kind of the way that I've talked about lovers of learning. And so we constantly want to feed you places, things, podcasts, books, articles, anything that we can try to point to that at least kind of creates conversation, creates cognitive kind of development, maybe some surrender, humility, some good listening opportunities. Honestly, most of the time it's just good listening that leads to learning. I have 1,000 bug bites, so if I itch the whole time, Jed, I'm so sorry. And if you're watching this on video, I
hope you can't hear it.
I apologize in advance if you can. It's an ASMR for itching.
We don't intend it to be.
You got 1,000 bug bites. Chiggers are the devil. That's proof that the devil exists. Cool. Well, so today we're going to continue that theme of being lovers that learn, or learning to love, or loving learning, whatever way my brain puts it together today. We're going to continue that theme of trying to put things in front of you that are challenging and helpful. And by doing that, we're really going to try to use things that have been helpful for us in our growth. So that being said, I think, Jed, you kind of have some structure or thoughts to like what we need to talk about first. Do we want to just say like our categories? Do we want to go like, third thing that we've been reading, second thing, first thing? How do you want to structure this? What are you thinking? Doesn't matter?
Yeah, it doesn't matter to me. I did not think about that. I mean,
in my mind, I try to be as broad as I can in the things that I'm learning about. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I've found myself being constricted in my learning a lot of times is when I focus in on a single topic or a single perspective, or a single point of view, obviously. So what I try to do is listen to a broad, I don't want to put myself in a position to be corrupted by, what I would say are negative perspectives or negative views in the sense of like, perspectives that I think devalue people or devalue, the things that I believe God does value. But I also am curious a lot of times to learn from people that have different perspectives.
Yeah.
And so that includes fictional books, podcasts that may not have a Christian theme. That may include articles and things that have the opposite perspective of what I'm accustomed to or what I've grown up in. And I think it's always important to do that to learn well. So let's just start with this. Like obviously, there's there's a lot going on in the world in the kind of the racial tension, the kind of standing up with the police officers that I believe most of the time are doing a pretty good job, and honestly a really good job. That we do count on for a lot of great things. And so there's a lot of divide, and it feels very similar to, I was listening to a podcast this morning, just a clip, and it says, the devil loves it when we divide ourselves in us and them. Yeah. That's what it loves. The devil loves to do that. And so there was Samaritans and the Jews, or that was the Christians and the Jews, or it was the Romans and the Israelites, all the way back to the devil loves when we disunify under a topic or under a banner or under a political, Democrat, Republican thing. And so one of the things I've been trying to do is find what is the unifying thing that is worth looking into when it comes to when I feel conflict. And so one of the things I've been listening to is listen to multiple things. But I've been reading and listening to Ravi Zacharias. But I've been reading and listening to both sides of the argument. And so I think there's some things that I've learned a ton about in the sense of like where the other point of view is coming from. When I hear Black Lives Matter, I attach it to, that sort of organization. And sometimes it's like, do I believe 100% in everything they're talking about? Maybe not. But do I believe Black Lives Matter? Yes, absolutely. Like that's a God thing. You know what I mean? So, kind of growing up in my understanding and reading their website and reading some of their beliefs and their core stuff has been really key for me. And like understanding their perspective, listening to African-American or Black preachers and their sermons over the last few weeks. This is why I got named Napoleon. I can post his kind of 20-minute sermon that he did the week afterwards. It was so incredibly brilliant in the sense of helping me understand that one of the things he said from his perspective was the concept that when you're an African-American and you see your white friends get their prayers answered, and then as an African-American Christian, you don't see God answer the same prayers. And so you're sitting in the aisle at church and your kids or the people around you don't have that same, and you're like, I prayed the same prayer for my kids. And and so he was just talking about the heartbreak that is.
Yeah.
And so that like really helped me to lean in the sense of just empathy in that direction, even as a Christian brother or sister, to want, God to be, vibrant and capable in their life and to lean in prayer. And then also to lean in on, kind of the other side of things of knowing we have some police officers in our church and that they do an amazing job and their families are incredible. And I know they serve with an attitude to bring peace and to provide a safe place. And so, reading about their hearts and how heartbroken they are over George Floyd and what they wish, would not be a perfect representation.
Yeah.
And so, listening to some of that stuff. So I encourage, maybe that's all I'm saying is look on both. If you're just picking one perspective, please, find a way, to look at both and to take it in because Jesus loves both sides of this. There is not an us and them in this.
Yeah.
There really isn't. I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot. Have you been reading anything or anything on those sides? And
okay, I have. I want to say I've gone like hunted down like Black Lives Matter materials or anything. I started a book yesterday called Beyond Colorblind. Let me look at the author here.
I'm curious about that. Cool.
Her name is Sarah Shin.
Okay.
And so it's a book that came out a couple of years ago. I think after, I don't remember the exact circumstances, but it feels like the first time this big like Black Lives Matter kind of came on the scene and was like all over, media and everything.
Everywhere.
And it's just the idea that like taking this stance of like I don't see color or I don't see ethnicity or whatever like is not enough.
Yeah.
Like, and it's really just another, almost even another form of racism, just like being like, just denying that we are ethnically different and not celebrating the differences and not hurting with the hurts and but almost even hiding behind this like it like just denies everything of the past by just saying like I'm colorblind, I don't see your color.
So it's not empathizing, right?
Exactly.
That's the thought process, which I mean that's part of the debate, and whether or not we need to fully emphasize, do we need to be, ask for forgiveness for past generations' sins and so on. But I think that's a healthy way to read that and to understand that maybe the other side hears those words differently when our hearts maybe aren't fully aware of what we're communicating. Part of the reason why I struggle sometimes to say Black Lives Matter is because I don't necessarily always agree with the political movement, but I absolutely agree with the value of the person. And I think racism is absolutely not found in the Bible. It's something that is absolutely seen in Revelation is totally destroyed and that everybody tongue and tribe. So, I get that. And I think that's why where we're at in the Midwest, it's so important to ask better questions and to dig And that's part of the reason if you're not having a conversation with someone with color in their pigment and you're asking them how they hear the statements that we're saying, it's because you're uncomfortable and you're not willing to ask the questions. Not because they don't have answers that you may not like or that, you know what I mean? Or that you may not fully understand. And if you're not willing to have a conversation with a cop, let me just say this. If you've never been on a ride along with a cop and you've not, you don't understand the intensity of that job. I've been on a ride along multiple times. It is an intense job when you're in the middle of the night and you're pulling somebody over you don't know and you're trying to be safe, but you also know that you need to be aware. And that is a difficult thing to do well. And so, you know, I think this is just a great place to start because if we're going to love to learn, as we're saying, these are the opportunities. These are the things right in front of us. That's not the whole thing we want to talk about today. I know I opened the can up with like the most intense thing ever, but I just think if we don't talk about that and we kind of go to the other things, I think everybody's kind of like, yeah, whatever. I have plenty to learn right here. And this may be the place you need to start. I mean, truthfully. It just may need to be the place you need to start. I have mentioned it before, but talking to strangers, it is not divided. I'm telling you, Malcolm Gladwell, go read that book. Download it, read it. It's a healthy place to start. Because it both shows the perspective of cops and it shows the perspective that all lives matter, because Black lives matter, and so it's healthy in kind of giving both sides to saying like this is a difficult thing that we're up against. So cool. Put your comments in there. But, you know, remember to be kind and gracious. We're learning and growing too and figuring this stuff out. We're not afraid of the conversation, but we don't want to make a point on the internet. We want to try to make a difference with individuals and in our own hearts and the people around us. That's what we want to do.
I think. Just being willing to accept ignorance is like a big thing. That's been a big thing for me because I know that word for like my whole life has just had this negative stigma to it where I'm not ignorant. Like I am educated. I'm a learned man. I'm ignorant. Like I'm ignorant. And I need to learn. I need to be educated.
And then we say it all the time to each other, right? I'll give you grace to learn if you give me grace to learn.
Exactly.
And we just need that space. So let's just jump to something a little lighter. Because there's other things that obviously, you know, to let this engross and take over your whole life is to miss opportunities that are also in front of you to learn about other things or grow or to, you know, and like I still have to be a dad of 3 boys that don't see color in any way, shape or form. To even try to explain this to them is difficult because racism isn't necessarily, you know, it's not inherited or it's not, you know, inherent in the sense of when you're born, it's something that's taught. And to a level So here's where I've been listening to that's been really fun. Are you ready? Hardcore History. All right. By Dan Carlin. It is a podcast that if you like history at all, I was talking to my friend Dylan about this, who is a social studies teacher and wasn't aware of this. And we were driving in a car and I showed him the podcast and I showed him all the things that were in it. It was like if someone revealed calorie-free pizza that you have free access to. I mean, the guy was just like, I'm going to devour this. And I'm like, I know. I mean, it was fantastic. And so just to give you a little bit of background, Dan Carlin hosts a podcast, but he calls himself, he is not a historian, he's a lover of history. So it's very similar to how we try to view ourselves, like he just studies other historians. But he walks through certain events in time, like World War I as the blueprint of apocalypse. And so the concept of like a world war that could end it all, you know, that concept. And it's like an 8-parter with like 4-hour episodes. He only releases 2 episodes a year.
Oh my gosh.
2 episodes a year that are close to,
because he's researching.
Because he's researching so hard, and he puts them together in almost like a book or audio book form. But it's a talk show in the sense of like he is comedic and he likes to come at it. He is not like, let's talk about Midway and like describes like you know this many ships are involved and this many. He is reading the background of the captains on these ships. He's reading the background journals of the soldiers on the ground, and then he's giving you the perspectives of like the technology of the weapons at the time, the strengths and the pluses, and the reasons that battles go the way they did, and giving you all sides to why they think things went certain ways. And it is captivating to me. It is overwhelmingly powerful in the sense of just showing how leadership at the highest levels, even in the military government, they're put in impossible situations that you and I would just never want to be put in the situations of. And I think it's helpful for me to recognize that a lot of the things that we face in our daily lives are not new. They're just not new. They've been people for hundreds of years now recorded have been going through the same thing. So highly encourage hardcore history. Check it out. It is not something I would say is super kid friendly in the sense of the subject matter and like what they do, but man, it is amazing in the level of, I think, just information. And yeah, it just pulls me in every episode. I'm already done with it. It was released last week. It's 4 hours long. I'm done. I'm sad. I'm sad that it's done. It is so good. And he's going through World War II from the perspective of the Japanese Pacific War, giving you an idea of like why Japan was such a difficult adversary in World War II and why it was a difficult campaign. So it's pretty cool.
Dang.
Yeah. So that's the podcast. It's one of them. What have you been listening to?
I think I mentioned it last time we talked about this a little bit, but I've been back into it. Been finding times to listen to it. But the soundtrack show, David W. Collins hosts it. He's done.
I haven't listened to it yet. I need to.
Yeah, it's really good. He's done a lot of soundtrack work for different things in Hollywood. Nothing like super major, but worked on some of like the lower level like Star Wars shows. Like I think he did music for Lego Star Wars, the video game. Like, you know, just kind of
but some of those are epic though.
Yeah.
I mean, they're epic.
Yeah. And a little bit of voice acting too and stuff. Yeah. But yeah, so he'll just take I just listened to yesterday, he literally just went and looked back at music from like the old timey Universal monster movies, Frankenstein and The Invisible Man and Dracula and stuff like that. And just like, there's not a lot of music in it, but talked about how it evolved from, I think Dracula was kind of the first one that had some music in it. And it was just kind of the intro theme. And then talked about how they, a little bit more in Frankenstein. And my favorite thing is in one of the very first episodes, he calls it the language of death in movies. And it's just like this 3-note phrase. It's called the Dies Irae is what it's called. And it's just like 3 notes that if you listen for it, it signals like someone's death or something terrible happening or like the Jaws theme is basically just the Dies Irae.
That's crazy.
So yeah, he did a breakdown of The Fellowship of the Ring. He's done all 3 original Star Wars movies. Psycho, like it's just kind of all across the board. Just he talks about John Williams a ton, obviously, but
he's the man.
He's the man. He's the man.
That sounds really, really, really cool.
I love it. It's just a really good, just sit back and listen and just like, he's done a couple of things too, where I think the first one he did was with the first Star Wars movies, where he just calls it a musical commentary. So you just sync up the movie with him and he talks about the musical cues as the movie goes along. And
dude, that sounds fantastic. Yeah. So could you physically play the movie, you think, and like listen to him with
I've done it.
Oh, yeah. Dude, that is so cool. That is so cool. Those types of things are amazing. Disney released this is super silly. They released a thing called Lion King 1.5, where all it was Timon and Pumbaa doing that. And I, as a kid, even I was like, that is super silly, but I love that concept. And now that's what YouTube's full of, right? Is people reacting to other people's videos. That's all it is.
Speaking of reaction videos, there's this channel. This guy, he's not a Christian, but he started reacting to worship music and Christian music.
Okay.
And you can just see it's kind of incredible. He starts with Oceans.
Yeah. I've watched a few of them.
Yeah. He's literally just like,
not a Christian.
Not a Christian. He's just listening, just being like, I love all kinds of music. I'm going to give this a shot. And just listening just to the music, just like criticizing the music and stuff. But the whole time listening to lyrics and being like, these are good. Like, just like you can see as they move along, just how much they're like starting to impact, and like he's thinking about it, and like I don't know, it's really, really cool.
I was watching him respond. I don't know if it was Oceans, but he like starts to cry in like one of them.
Yeah, it's oh man, I saw that one. Which one was it?
So Will I. Yeah, I was gonna say it was one of the ones that like it has the bridge, and he was like, I'm like crying, like what is I loved it.
Yeah,
which I love. Really I love honest reaction videos, and I think what I love about it is that corporate side of music is kind of felt. You know, they feel what you feel. It kind of gives you that feeling that you would be in the room for a concert, but in like the smallest, minute, not real. Like, you know what I mean? It kind of attaches you to it.
For me, it was like, because I'm so like in worship and Christian music all the time, I kind of hate it a little bit. And so like listening to like Christian radio or anything, I won't do it. And then I just get this reminder, like Oceans, I make fun of Oceans all the time. And that's the first one he listens to, and I'm like,
It's a good song.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
like it just brings us like, okay, I guess maybe it has some
Oh,
power.
dude. And you and I have talked about this before, I think, on the podcast, where like the Bible can become the same way for me, where like
Yeah.
people quote the Bible and I'm like, oh, that was the easy thing to do. And I'm like, oh, wait, that's a really bad way to talk about the Bible. But in some ways, I'm like, no, like you need to use, broader, bigger concepts to kind of attach those themes of the Bible. Not saying that the Bible can't speak on its own or it doesn't have power, but I just feel like sometimes that's it's not the fullness of what the Bible's meant to be used as. Kind of in a similar thing, I'm just going to attach a quick other podcast that I've recently just got into. I don't know as much about. It's called The Last Archive. And it's just this girl that is going into old city buildings and looking up basically old archives of stories and kind of bringing them back to life. And so one of the first ones she talks about is the lie detector and how the guy that created the lie detector was a fraud. And it is
the irony.
it is fantastic. And so The Last Archive, and it's just a fun way to like, I feel like just kind of learn some old things, kind of have some silly things. But then at the end, it's not just like a silly story. It's like genuine, like you're like learning history. This guy that created this ends up being the like, because you see this all the time now, like 7 out of 10 men prefer Gillette shaving cream over, whatever. He was the guy they were using for a lot of this research starting out because he had this machine that he thought, but he was lying about everything.
So funny.
And it was so good, man. By the end of it, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, and so the whole point of it is just like, the archives now we can go back and prove and see, and, but he got away with it because technology and, the internet at the time couldn't, you just go to the next city, kind of move on like the peddler of, anyway, it's insane. And so she interviews his kids and talks about who he is. And it's really, really, really well done. And what you would love about it too is she goes back and archives all the old detective music and sounds and like uses old like pieces of sound from like the 50s and like the live radio shows that they would like put in, and she uses those in the thing to kind of create these dramatic scenes and kind of retellings, and it's really, really, really well done.
Great.
So I just really found
great.
It'd be a cool thing to check out. It's called The Last Archive. Book real quick. One book. I know we've talked about books a lot because we're like, what are we at? 30 minutes, 25 minutes?
22.
All right, we're good. Let's do one book apiece. I know there's lots of things we could talk about. I'm going to let you go first because, I think I've gone first twice now. So it's always healthy for you. But like, what's a book? Maybe give me one fictional, one non-fictional if you have both. Because I do think sometimes getting into a fictional story is actually a healthy way to detach and kind of see the world, and then the other side, of course, is good for growth.
Well, the fiction book that I just finished, it kind of ties into kind of everything that's going on, but it's still like a, it's still an entertainment. Is the main point of it. I just read The Help.
Ooh,
yeah,
I like that movie.
Yeah, the movie was good. I rewatched it, and like it's funny because I remember Viola Davis, who plays like the main maid in that movie. She kind of didn't like it. That's a movie she regrets being in because she was like, the whole point was to show like how life was for the help, the black maids that were raising these white kids in these houses, and it didn't
make
do
an
that.
impact. Yeah.
The book I feel like did a better job of that. So I can kind of see that of maybe it leans too much into the entertainment side and like but it was helpful for me to know. Catherine Stockett is the author.
Okay.
And I guess it's almost a little autobiographical where she had a black maid that raised her growing up, and she, was just
that movie. That movie is good.
Like,
that movie is good. So you're saying she wrote this as the perspective of the kid.
Yeah,
that it was raised. Okay.
Yeah. So Emma Stone is she's the actress in the movie, plays Skeeter,
the journalist.
And then there's Minnie is one of the maids, and Abilene's the other one. But it was really good. I mean, like I say, I could kind of see how people could argue, it's just not an accurate portrayal.
Movies are always difficult to.
But and the book does a better job. But even the book, there are two quotes in it. That I was like, honestly, if you miss these quotes, then you're probably gonna not enjoy the book. And they kind of come in the same place, where Abilene and Minnie, the two main maids in this book, are like sitting there. They're talking about how Abelin's trying to make the case that like all these boundaries that are built up between the white and the black and the rich women who are paying them to raise their kids and the black maids and stuff are just fake. Like they don't really exist. They're
in the background.
Exactly. And so this one, they've, if you don't know the point of the thing, this female journalist goes to these black maids asking to help her write this book from their point of view of what it's like to
be the help.
Yeah, to be the help. And they are kind of convinced into it, and this book comes out and causes this big stir and whatnot. And so that's what they're talking about. And Abeline says, wasn't that the point of the book? For women to realize we are just two people. Not that much separates us, not nearly as much as I'd thought. And then just a little bit later, she says, all I'm saying is kindness don't have no boundaries. So, all right. Like that's good.
I see it on the preacher side of things. So I immediately like there's no laws of earth that go against love, like love and the fruits of the spirit. Against what does it say? Against these things there is no law.
Yeah.
Against Galatians, but that's you're so right, man. Like it translates, and that's always what's so funny is like when you go to a different culture, even a different language speaking like country, certain things translate that you don't have to speak. Smiles, kindness, love. It translates.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be spoken. I love that. That sounds great. So that's good. What about your nonfiction?
Nonfiction, man, I have a couple ways I could go with this.
You do you, man.
I just started reading it last night. I'm one chapter in. It's called One More Thing, by BJ Novak, who is Ryan from The Office.
Okay, I was like, how do I know that name? I was like, I know that name.
And so like this first chapter was literally just like, it's the story of the hare after he raced the tortoise. And it's just like him trying to like make people understand. He's like, I took 6 naps during that race.
Yeah,
like,
and they don't get it.
Yeah, and so he re-races the tortoise and wins.
Yeah.
But it's just literally, I think that's what it is just like random stories and I don't know.
Silly thoughts and wisdom that comes out of it.
So
that'll be a fun one. You'll have to tell us how it goes. I'll probably run one more thing. BJ Novak. Okay.
Yep.
I was like, I immediately was like, I know that because he was one of the writers on Office for a little while too. Okay, that's why I was like, I feel like immediately went in my head. I was like, and then I was like, I see that name with that song on the screen. Is that? That's just terrible. That means I've watched The Office. Not as much as you, but
watched it enough.
Cool. Well, nonfiction I think is a difficult thing right now. I'm not listening to a whole lot of nonfiction, or I mean fiction. I'm not listening to a whole lot of fiction. I'm reading a lot more nonfiction right now. The stories I kind of get caught and wrapped up into them, and then I like finish them as fast as I possibly can.
Yeah.
I would say the history side of things is kind of taking that place right now where I get caught up in a narrative, but it has more substantial kind of non-creative. It has creative limitations because it's real, but at the same time, it's that narrative like pull me into another world, make me think about things. Kind of halfway through a different series that I don't know, I may or may not pick back up. I'm in the middle of reading like 3 books right now, which is normally how I roll.
Me too.
Which is always a hard thing. Which I know you told me not to talk about Ravi, but The Logic of God is really, really good.
Yep.
Ravi,
reading that as well.
Yeah, I did. I was listening this morning. It's so good. It's a 52-week devotional or 52-chapter devotional by Ravi. I literally bought it because Ravi reads it and I'm listening to it and I just wanted to hear his voice. And it's really, really good. I don't know why I expected anything else. I've been listening to several different, pieces of, I think, attachment. One of the things that I totally forgot that was it's by a guy named why am I blanking? It's All Is Grace by Brennan Manning.
Yeah.
I went back and read that or parts of that. If you have, oh man, the Ragamuffin Gospel is what he's most famous for.
That's a good book.
It is a good book. He sees the limitations of it. I'll just tell you that. The All His Grace is so good because it's the reflections of someone that has been involved in walking with Jesus for like 50 some years, and he's in his 70s, and he's just thinking back through his whole experiences. And so it's just highlights of his life, despairing moments of his life, where God have been. And it's almost like, it feels a lot like Proverbs or Ecclesiastes is what it feels like to me. It's almost like his version of like, listen to my words, son, and follow them type thing. But he doesn't have, he doesn't have kids, and he's not reflecting on that and that intentionality, but he's more just reflecting back to the younger generations. So as a follower of Jesus, and then also as a pastor, because he's a prominent preacher, teacher, it hits in so many different ways. There's a poem at the end that I think I've read on a Sunday morning multiple times, that he just talks about just the hope of grace, and that everything we experience, whether it's our highest highs and lowest lows, we still have to depend on grace. And that there's no place, even in our best moments and in our worst moments, we can depend and fully give into, because all of it is under the banner of grace. And it is so needed right now, especially I think in my own soul, because there is just this paralyzing fear a lot of times that I'm making the wrong choice by not speaking up, or I'm making the wrong choice by speaking up too much.
Yeah.
Or if I'm, ignoring an issue, or if I'm honing in on one that doesn't matter, And so, giving myself some grace and letting myself kind of have some space to believe that God is still God. That's just an encouraging message of that book. So I highly encourage All His Grace by Brennan Manning. It's powerful, powerful, powerful book. Trying to think, I have like a couple others. Didn't See It Coming. I think I've mentioned it before, by why can I not remember his name? The Canadian. Why can I know his name? I can't remember his name right now. So I Didn't See It Coming. It's the other guy, the podcast that we listen to all the time, that I cannot. He's from Willow Creek years ago. But anyway, that book itself is just reflections on a life of regret or a life of success that we didn't. He looks back on his life and he goes, I did not realize how powerful this moment was in the proper choice. I didn't realize how devastating this moment was in the improper choice. And so he's just kind of calling you to think through your decisions and to kind of see the value and possibilities. So obviously for me, like reflection and some of that stuff is huge. And those are part of the reads, self-improvement would be like kind of the title of the non-Christian. I would call it spiritual formation would kind of be what we would call it in the, in the Christian world. It's definitely been a challenging time in the sense of the pandemic into this, and then, into the unknowns of the election, and then, whatever the new normal is going to look like. I think there's a lot of pressure right now to make the right choices, and like, what do we need to do? And, the fear of rushing back too soon, or the fear of losing something that we had before, or the fear of forgetting something. I don't know. It's all there. So anything else that's having an impact, or things that you're learning, listening to? I mean, obviously podcast books are great, type of things, and articles, or, things, stuff of that nature is powerful too. I'm watching The Chosen. I normally am like you. I just rebel against everything that is like made by Christians for Christians. I don't know why. I don't know if it's just
because they're bad.
There sometimes are. You know what it feels like? It's like the corny, just not attractive. Just I'm what it feels like boiled vegetables.
Yep.
I just don't want to eat them. You know what I mean? And so these are seasoned well, and it's done well. And if you haven't watched the first season of The Chosen, I highly encourage you to do it. You can find it, free of multiple places, but I also think it's worthy of buying. One of my favorite reasons, and if you don't know what The Chosen is, it's literally a season-long idea of Jesus picking his disciples and followers, and them kind of following him, but at the same time tracking Nicodemus's spiritual growth as well on the other side of kind of the Pharisee or Sadducee line. I love the way they depict Jesus. It is absolutely one of my favorite things to watch him interact with children and with Peter, and the way that they just very it is a Bible college nerds favorite series. The way they just subtly drop things in there and do not try to explain it. It's not like one of those where they're like, "Hi, Simon, would you pick up that rock?" Like, they wouldn't do that. They don't do that type of stuff, and it's much more like if you're paying attention and you see these nuanced little conversations and the way that Jesus looks at his mom and the way that he looks at his disciples, and he makes jokes. He makes farting noises at one point with these kids. Like, he just does things that you've never seen Jesus do, but yes, they're real life. And what I explained, I think, to you is it feels very black and white when you read a lot of things about Jesus in the sense of its description, not necessarily in the sense of like you always know exactly what's going on, black and white, just very two-tone.
Yeah.
And this is color. I mean, it just feels vibrant. It feels like it's life. So maybe that's the only other thing that I would say I've been kind of paying attention to, and I treat them like little sermons, man, because by the end I'm going like, man, I need to reimagine my Jesus a little better. I had him a little two-toned when he needs to be a little brighter, a little bit more humane in the sense of his humanity. So yeah.
Cool.
Well, this has been a good one.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. I hope any comments or anything, just, be kind in the comments. Give us grace, we'll give you grace. We're just kind of trying to be lovers that learn. Learners that love. You hate it when I say all this.
I really do.
We're just trying to love learning, and I think it's been a pleasure to have a chance to do these podcasts. We're going to continue to try to do them. Tune in next week when we try to take on this topic of what it means to be a man, and to step up and take that step, and hopefully by then we'll know, right?
Yeah. I'll do all the research.
Okay, good.
I'll figure it out.
I'll ask my wife for some advice. No. Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to hit the subscribe button or turn on that notification bell. Check us out on Sunday mornings at 9, or I should say 10:15 is when our live service is. If not, I guess we'll see you next week. Have a great and glorious day in the Lord. See you later.
See you.